Welcome to the Thursday afternoon edition of Red Meat, what I'm going to call the Prozac edition of Red Meat. As we reach a point in the presidential campaign, we're about 3 weeks out. The election is getting closer. Some people actually voting in some of those early states. I'm Jim Geraghty, the wild optimist. I'm joined by Mark Hemingway. Are there a realist or a desperately gloomy Eeyore-like pessimist, depending on your point of view? So, Mark, let's begin. What's worrying you about the state of John McCain and the Republicans as we approach this election 3 weeks out?
It's just that they're not carrying forth any sort of coherent message. We got less than a month ago before the election, and they seem to be taking a kitchen sink approach at the moment. I understand. They've been going a little more negative with the air stuff, and I think that Obama's radical associations and things like that are certainly fair game. I just don't know if you want that to be your entree rather than your side course in the middle of an economic crisis. You need to be putting forth something very positive the voter can grab onto in addition to raising questions about Obama.
Okay. First of all, coherent messages are very overrated. No, there's no real need for that, no. So more seriously, let me give you 5 big reasons as to why the campaign is going much better than ever the popular perception would be. And feel free to refute any one of them. The first is, if you look at the tracking polls as of today, Thursday, Gallup looks terrible. Gallup has Obama up by 11. But you look at the rest. Rasmussen has Obama up 5. Hotline has him up 6. Sogby has it at 4 and Battlegrounds at 3. That's not a terribly unsurpassable, unovercomable lead there.
No, but it's not where you want to be.
No, of course not. But it's not an insurmountable obstacle with 3 weeks to go. And in fact, if you look at the current circumstances, right before we came on, the Dow dropped below 9,000. Stock market is plummeting absolutely terribly. This is probably the worst circumstance to be a Republican since either 1974 or maybe 1932. And Obama's up 4, 5, 6. I mean, that's a very dramatic underperformance of where the Democratic Party ought to be. Look, you're right, rather be up, but all things considered, 4 to 5 points is a very manageable lead. Then you lead to the second point, which is the Bradley effect. Now, in the latest issue of National Review, which you should be subscribing to, Jay Cost has a very interesting article looking at this. What I'm going to kind of observe is that there are a couple people who are coming out and saying that they're worried about the Bradley effect, drastically overstating the Obama lead. You're hearing that argument from interesting quarters. One is Charles Henry, the researcher who first wrote about this way back when. He thinks Obama's got to be ahead by double digits heading into the election.
I don't buy that.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah.
Juan Williams of Fox News and NPR, he says he's hearing 5 to 8%. Again, seems very high. Willie Brown, former mayor of San Francisco, goes out as an Obama surrogate. He's putting it 4 to 5 points. Now, for a lot of this cycle, I thought there wasn't any. I thought that you really weren't going to see, if people didn't like Obama, they'd just say, I like McCain, I like Hillary, I like somebody else. They wouldn't, come out and, lie to a pollster. I'm now starting to rethink that. I'm starting to wonder, but any sense of where?
Well, first off, I just want to say, I mean, if McCain does win, I don't want it to be because of the Bradley
absolutely,
effect.
yeah, it goes without saying.
I understand that these are all things that we have to discuss as a matter of, being, clear-eyed about what the election is going to be and trying to forecast things. But I don't know. I mean, I just am not buying it. I really am not. And plus, the other reason why the Bradley effect doesn't necessarily strike me as a big concern is to the extent that it might be real. I think it's going to be far less than people are suggesting. And I think that there are things going the Obama campaign's way that will counteract that. Overall higher voter turnout, may very well erase any impact any potential Bradley effect, if it exists, might have.
That's a good segue, but one thing I'd note about the Bradley effect, if we're going to see it, you're not going to see it nationwide. You're not going to see it evenly distributed. No. And in fact, I think you're going to see it in states that Obama didn't do as well as expected in the primary process. Well, what are those states that come to mind? New Hampshire, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all states that are pretty key to his campaign, and states where I think he'd really like to not have the Bradley effect. Yeah. So just one thing to kind of put in the back of your mind. Now, you brought up the issue of turnout. 2 separate issues I want to get into here. The first is, I think it's safe to say, you look at the turnout at Sarah Palin's rallies, you look at the amount of enthusiasm, the number of volunteers coming on to Republican campaigns, the Republican base will show up. Does that seem like a safe assumption, or?
I think it's a mostly safe assumption, yeah. But again, I worry that certainly this time around, McCain doesn't have the voter turnout apparatus that Bush had, and Bush was very good at using and mobilizing. Bush is very good at using to mobilize voters. I'm not saying that they have institutionally the GOP I think has a very good get out the vote mechanism, but I just in elections like the past couple of elections where you've got margins of 100,000 voters here and there that are determining electoral votes or less, you really need to depend on that, and that could be the difference.
Okay. I think it's safe to say the anecdotal evidence is suggesting the Republican base is going to show up, something that was not a guarantee for much of this year. John McCain was not a guy who set the conservative base on fire. Or I guess you could say specifically, he was the guy who set them on fire, and that attempted arson, bothered some members of the base. But I think with Palin, the base shows up. I think that saves North Carolina, Indiana, probably Florida, Missouri, Nevada, Virginia, I even think, is one of those states where as long as the Republican base shows up, McCain is more than halfway there. And you look back at these tracking polls that I mentioned, a lot of them put the independent vote fairly well split. Wall Street Journal has Obama up by 4% amongst independents. That's by no means an overwhelming margin. No. And the CBS poll actually had McCain up 5 amongst independents. So there's some evidence up there that if the Republicans show up and the independents split about even, it's not going to be a blowout. And in fact, McCain is pretty close to being there. The last factor is how many of the Democrats does McCain win over, the frustrated Hillary folks. Now, I wouldn't count on that to put me over the top, but those folks are going to be out there. The Pumas exist. And so you put all that together, that's going to at the very least keep this race close.
Well, I certainly hope you're right.
Or do you want me to submit to drug testing?
Well, no. I mean, look. I never, even if I am a tad pessimistic about the way the race will turn out, let's be perfectly clear here. It's still a very divided, purple country. We're not looking at an election that's going to be decided by 15, 20 points and 100 or more electoral votes. I mean, we are looking at a situation where I think even in the best that Obama could hope for would be a 7-point advantage in the popular vote and maybe 15 extra electoral votes. And or thereabouts. So, if people are pessimistic, it's not because the sky is falling in or that somehow the country became less center right than it already is. It's just the way things are.
The sky is not falling, but a lot of brokers are from high windows. The other thing you mentioned, the turnout machine of McCain earlier. And I have my anxieties. We're not seeing the perfect, well-oiled machine that the Bush campaign was back then. But there are two factors. One, you do have other groups that are picking up some of the slack on that. The National Rifle Association just endorsed McCain today. I think it's a very big deal. They have 4 million members out there, have made very big differences. Basically, at every presidential election that a Republican has won since 1980, they endorsed the Republican, and they made a very big difference at the grassroots level. And the other thing is, and this is my most controversial one, and this is the one where viewers out there are entitled to be skeptical. Early voting just finished in Ohio. The total there was about 28,000. That is out of 8.2 million. So you're looking at somewhere between 0.3% and 0.4%. That's an astonishingly low number. And people were saying they wanted to get people out for this early voting period that just completed. Mark, any guess of what's going on over there?
I have no idea, but I will say that in and of itself is a very interesting piece of evidence. And if there's anything out there that would suggest that this Obama turnout machine that they've been throwing millions of dollars at and Democrats have been building up for 8 years now may not be the feared monster that's going to swallow us all. Yeah. That's really potent and that's really telling.
Yeah.
So I still think that maybe you do need to get off the Prozac, Jim, but you do raise a very good point by bringing that up.
Yeah. I mean, we may see everybody going out absentee balloting, and it may still turn out to be a fantastic bells and whistles turnout machine. But I think you can say in the first major test of it, dramatically underperforming. Now, McCain's dramatically underperforming as well. But it just is weird. It's Ohio. It's the big swing state. It was deciding last time. They're being inundated with ads. The Washington Post poll had this remarkable figure that said 40% of people in the state said they'd been contacted either in person or on the phone by the Obama campaign. That's an amazing turnout effort. And you got 28,000 people. A mystery to be perused. So basically, this is our perspective from Thursday afternoon. We hope all of you are enjoying there, heading into the weekend there. Keep your spirits up, or be gloomy if you like. We will be back next week doing a bit of a debate discussion for the last presidential debate. We're looking forward to it. Thanks for watching Red Meat.